I consider myself the luckiest person on this planet. I came from a very horrid situation in the state of California for a lot of reasons that I was selected to be abused by my mother, who had a lot of issues of her own. Kind of probably started around the age of 4, even before that. And finally at age 12, God bless, I was rescued. My story, per se, is never about abuse. It's about resilience. I knew at age 4, when my mom, by accident, was very drunk and she was hitting me and she kind of fell. She grabbed onto my right arm and she pulled it out of its socket by accident. And then the next day, presents me to the doctor and she's crying, "Oh, he fell from the bunk bed and I tried to run into this room after I put on my robe, opened the door, and he slipped out of my fingers." We all knew what the truth was, including my father, who was a very good firefighter. But I knew at age 4 to hide this secret. At age 8, unexpectedly, my mother had burned my arm on a gas stove. And it was very premeditated. She read it in the paper and she wanted to try it on the boy. At that time, I was David the boy, and then I was reduced to it. And I knew at age 8, after I was burned, I remember I was in the basement and that's where I was residing. I raised my right arm and it had blisters from the palm of the hand to the bicep. And it was very painful, but I basically took a vow. My vow was almost like Gone with the Wind. I'll never go hungry again. And I said to myself and my higher power, and I was very much in tears and a lot of pain, I said, from this moment on, I am not going to quit. I knew I could not change the exterior of my situation. My mother was getting worse and worse and worse. My father was checked out. He was just overwhelmed. My brothers were like, "All right, better you than me. Sorry, pal." As a young boy, if my mother didn't feed me, I'd steal food. I used to run so fast from my mother's home, it was called, to the school, and I would steal lunches, and I'm very embarrassed about that. When my parents separated in January of 1973, that's when I really lost it, because my father, he would actually come from his fire station in San Francisco, take 3 or 4 buses, walk up the hill to check on his kids. He would stand behind me and he wasn't allowed to talk to me, but he would just kind of bump into me when I was washing the dishes, you know, and I knew he kind of came home for me. And I thought, well, he always said, one of these days, you know, David, one of these days I'm gonna have a talk with that woman. I'm going to put my foot, you watch, it's gonna, one of these days. And he said that since age 8. Every single fracking day. And now I'm 12, my parents separate, and this gentleman who was a firefighter, actually worked a couple shifts at his fire station in San Francisco. Everybody said he was such a gentle person and he was overwhelmed. You know, sometimes it wasn't even one day. It was like just every situation, it was overwhelming. Looking at it now. My mother, God bless her, she never had a chance. I believe she never had a chance. She was raised in Salt Lake City, Utah, in I think the 1920s or 1930s. Women didn't have a lot of rights. They really, really didn't. In the church, the Mormon church, it was men, dogs below men, and then women. She was I don't know if she was physically abused, but I know psychologically she was abused by her controlling mother. So you can see this bomb that's being made that's slowly going to go off. She would sit there in a robe that was worn, drinking 10 o'clock in the morning, and she would put the phone down and just go, yeah. So you can see this stew that's being cooked. My mom was lost. Postmortem depression, PTSD, alcoholism. Okay, this bomb again is going to go off. And I feel bad because my mom at certain times, I used to pray that mommy would wake up. That I remember when she burned my arm at age 8, I screamed so much. I really believed as a child that her ears would just pop off, boop. And I thought, oh my God, what am I doing to my little boy David? And I prayed she would hug me. I used to see a rainbow in the morning and I would put my hands together. I thought God lived at the end of the rainbow. I says, please, I want to make my mommy happy. But I knew after a while I couldn't. I was told at that time my brothers could run me over basically. I was invisible. I was not a member of the family. I was the perfect slave. And it was very difficult. And I couldn't sleep because I had to listen to all the sounds upstairs from the basement to see when she would snap her fingers or yell at me to run up the stairs and do all these chores. So at age 9 in the summer, I'm very tired. I guess I fell asleep in the bottom of the basement. I sit on top of my hands. And I have to stand in front of her. My hands are glued to my side, my chin glued to my chest. I'm not allowed to have eye contact with her because, you know, it's about control and being dehumanized. And she starts blathering, okay, you know the rules. 20 minutes to do the dishes. And she drones on and on and on. And I know the game. The joke is, when she starts blathering, the clock starts running. And I actually closed my eyes. And I guess I fell asleep right in front of her. And she yelled at me and I woke up, and she grabs this knife. And she says, if it doesn't do the dishes in exactly 20 minutes, not only we have nothing to eat, I will kill you. I will kill it. You know, people who really control things, their personality is all about control. They really have no control. Her mother is drunk. She's drunk and she's starting to weave. She's got the knife in her right hand. My younger brother at the time, Russell, comes over, and I think he's about 4, maybe 3 or 4. And I remember him clinging onto my mother's upper thigh. And so he's rocking. She's rocking, she's waving her hands, and by accident, because this was not premeditated, the knife from her right hand slipped, and there was blood just kind of on my upper chest, spurting a little bit. And yet I was in my mother's arms, and I kind of blacked out and woke up, blackout and woke up. And this sounds, again, a little abnormal. I remember waking up, I'm in my mother's lap, and she's trying to like bandage my little wound. And she ripped off my soiled t-shirt. And I got to tell you, that was one of the best moments of my life at that time, because I thought, oh my God, it's over. With the bleeding, I really thought I was going to go to the hospital. And everybody says, oh my God, Dave, the first thought in your mind was probably food. I said, hell no. What was it, Pelzer? I said, clean sheets. But unfortunately, Mom had other plans. What happened afterwards, you know, I kind of recovered a little bit, and she now said, you have 30 minutes to do the dishes. And it was very difficult. I remember sliding my feet or leaning my upper chest on the railing or whatever to the countertop to wash and rinse and put them into the drying area. I heard something in the living room, and I heard a rustling sound, and immediately that was my savior, my father. So I broke precedent. I left my workstation. Mother was outside playing with her boys, and Dad likes to read his paper after dinner. And he had to have heard me sliding my feet. And I remember standing about 3 feet in front of him, and I'm not supposed to speak unless spoken to first. That's one of the rules of engagement in this horror house. And I remember to this day hearing sounds of blood dripping from my chest down to my t-shirt, pooling, and then dripping on the carpet. And we were about 3 feet away. I know he heard me. And I stuttered because I didn't talk very well at that time. I said, mother, mother, mother stabbed me. And he said something like, what did you do now? And I kind of said it again, like, mom stabbed me. And he lowered his paper, basically, and he said something effective, if I'm correct, like, you know, I don't want to go through this hell tonight. Whatever you got to do, just do your chores. I don't want to go through that hell tonight. And I really lost respect for my father after that. 2 days later, I'm in the bottom of the basement. I'm sitting on my hands, and my wound is closing, and pus is escaping the wound. It's like a yellow, dark green pus, and I had a fever. And even though Mom fed me after I was stabbed, she hasn't fed me like 2 or 3 days. Dad's back at work. We're back to normal. I'm in the bottom of the basement. And I had to do something. I had to break protocol. So I quietly went from the base of the stairs to the wash area where I'm supposed to wash these rags, these soiled rags. And what I did, I stupidly tried to wipe away my little wound, and it was like just being shocked, like sticking your fingers in an electrical outlet. And I remember telling myself, if you cry, you die, until I saw blood come out. And then I was very proud of myself. When I lived in the basement, I figured out another game. I had to out-chess my mom. I would bring home extra homework because she always told me how stupid I was, and you're not going to make it, and you're just a dum-dum, and you're an idiot. So I would grab books from the library, and I'd run up the hill to my mother's house, and she was so sinister, so sadistic, she would time her abuse time, or what we call it attention time, to how much homework I had, because she had to keep the facade that, you know, the boy's not being abused. The boy falls down the stairs, it runs into baseball bats, it runs into doorknobs. I'm like, okay, you're running out of these excuses. So I would read books of adventure, Treasure Island, or the little cabin boy stories, or these stories where the boy adjusted to some type of situation. And yet years later, when I got involved in child abuse and social services and youth at risk programs, I was coming up on the 20th anniversary of my rescue, and I wanted to write a thank you letter for my teachers. And that eventually became A Child Called It. And eventually, that book, A Child Called It, became the #1 book in the world. And I'm just so proud that everything worked out right. It's not about you, and you too. There's other people affected, per se. It's almost like you commit suicide, and what legacy are you leaving your children, or your spouse, or your family, or friends? It's not about you. It's about, you know, the collective. The Thursday prior to being rescued on Friday, my mother had dipped my limbs in a mixture of ammonia and Clorox. It's not an acid, but it does, and I was afraid for some reason she was going to put my head into the bucket. And my biggest focus was close your eyes, don't breathe. Because I was so focused on getting food, I had to do all the chores. I forgot to rinse off the solution. And I remember in a child called it, because I had written that chapter 1, it's called The Rescue, and it actually mends perfectly because I slept in the bottom of the basement. I was supposed to get up an hour prior to the family getting up in the dark of the basement, sweep the garage floor, sweep the stairs without any light. Really? Yeah, that sounds like it's going to work out. And I remember I woke up late because I wasn't sleeping that much. And I remember putting my hand on the banister and my hand was slipping. And I thought, okay, lack of motor skills. Because I'm not sleeping, I'm not eating, and the brain is not connecting. And I guess I just couldn't grip anything. I was slow on my chores for the breakfast dishes because I couldn't grip anything. It wasn't all about me. My brothers were so scared. My brother's like, oh my God, T-Rex, if she kills the boy, she might come after me or you. My neighbors saw this every day. So there's a lot of collateral damage because, again, a lot of people focus on themselves. And of course, I do at times too, but it's not always about all of us or about you. It's about the other people around you. I remember like hugging Mr. Ziegler, my 5th grade teacher, and he was the Clint Eastwood of teachers. And he had a tough exterior, but the sweetest man. And he was the one that burst into the principal's office and said, hey, have you seen that boy today? Because what happened is since the 4th grade, I had to stand, I was very embarrassed. I had to go to the nurse's office, strip down to my disgusting underwear briefs, and she would inspect me from my toes to my nose. So she had sheets and sheets of paper over the year and a half. And I showed up to school that Friday before I was rescued. I didn't know why, but Mr. Ziegler took one look at me, almost vomited. The nurse almost vomited. And Mr. Ziegler ran into the principal's office and says, if we don't rescue this boy today, he ain't coming to school Monday because he'll be dead. And the older I get, and that's why I'm telling this story, everything is about flashes. Everything's about moments. You making the moment, you embracing the moment, you powering through the moment. When I tell people you're having a bad day, it's just a day. If things aren't working out, it's only for the now, but it's your choice. But as the saying goes, California is always going to be on fire, but we can always rebuild. Because at the end, like I said before, at the end of the day, none of us are self-made. And I always tell people, never forget where you came from. Take the photo when you're 1,000 pounds, and now that you're 200 pounds, you appreciate it more. Take a photo of the worst day of your life. Now, a year later, look where you're at now. You see, it's about appreciating, again, where you're at, where you're going, and how you're going to get there.